morning. My name is Maria for WOW TV, and we are joined here today by the editor of the Georgia Straight newspaper, Charlie Smith. How are you today?
Very well, Maria. Thanks for visiting us.
Oh yeah, you're very welcome. So what's happening in the community that's new this week?
This week, one of the stories I did was I attended a lecture by Bob Rennie at the Urban Development Institute, and Bob Rennie is kind of known around Vancouver as the condo king, and he was discussing the state of the real estate market. So it was quite an extensive hour-long presentation. He does this every year. It's been going on for 10 or 11 years. And he talked about everything from first-time buyers to the wealth of seniors to immigration and the effect that's having. And in addition, he also took a bit of criticism directed at David Suzuki, who's the well-known environmentalist because of comments he had made.
Oh, and what were those comments, if you can tell us a bit?
Yeah, what happened was there was an article earlier this year where David Suzuki had suggested that Canada was full. And Bob Rennie had a concern about that. First of all, he thinks it's ridiculous, given that we have 34 million people in the second largest landmass in the world. Mm-hmm. But more to the point, that he feels that this type of talk is irresponsible in that because David Suzuki is like a global brand, this goes beyond our borders. And the issue that concerned Bob Rennie was that we have a history of shutting our borders to immigration and separating families. So he was bringing up the Chinese head tax, for instance. And then what happened was the exclusion legislation from 1923 to 1947, where there were like fewer than 70 people of Chinese descent came to Canada. Mm-hmm. So he feels that that David Suzuki shouldn't be making comments of this nature, but most of his talk was actually dealing with the housing market. That was just one small portion.
That's right. And what did he say about the real estate market that will influence immigrants?
I think one of the points he makes is that there are 39,000 people every year moving to the Lower Mainland, wow, and they need a place to live. Mm-hmm. And so in addition to that, he broke it down to Vancouver. So Vancouver is, you know, it's slightly less than 20% of the population of the region. So approximately 7,000 people are coming to Vancouver. That's in a city of a population of more than 600,000. So it's not that huge, but it's significant. And then, so what he was talking about was the issue of supply and also pricing, that sometimes you get some sales that are very high priced, and then they can distort the average. So he said if you take the top 20% of the condo market, for instance, the top sales out of the picture, you're left with an average price for the remaining 80% of $313,000 for a condo. And he was making the point that, you know, somebody putting down 10% down payment with an income, household income of just over $30,000, $31,000, that they could actually make the payments and buy the home. So he was making the argument that cities like New York, London, and San Francisco are far more expensive than Vancouver, but Vancouver's market can be distorted by the statistics when you include these high-end, like if you have a $2.5 million condo, or there was one that was a massive price at the Fairmont Hotel Vancouver, mm-hmm, that when these ones are taken out and you look at the remaining 80%, there's still a lot of affordable housing in Vancouver.
Right, and I know a lot of young people today are trying to get into the real estate market. What does this have on effect on young people today?
Yeah, that's a good question, Maria, and it's something that is of great concern to our staff too. One of the things Bob Rennie was pointing out is the wealth of seniors in their housing, and that there's actually, it's a massive sum, $163 billion worth of residential housing, mm-hmm, is owned clear title by people over the age of 55 in the Lower Mainland. So 55 to 74 is over 100 billion, 74 and up is another 50 billion, so it adds up to 163 billion. So he said these people are going to have a significant impact on the housing market, not just from dying and passing it along to their heirs, mm-hmm, which is often what the conversation is about, but about their own choices. So they're starting to downshift and buy in condo places, like the Olympic Village being one example, or there's a Binning residence out at UBC. And what's happening is they want more than one bedroom. often because they've got lots of money because they're selling their single-family homes. The other thing is a huge number of younger people are actually getting help with their down payment and with their deposits from parents and grandparents. And this is something that is often not factored into the discussions. So what Bob Rennie was saying, his surveys were like, 40% or something like that. And the impact means that people can make the payments, but the down payment is often the obstacle. And that kind of creates a two-tier society for young people, because the young people who don't have that help are kind of dealt out to a certain degree, whereas the other ones who do have that help, but the percentage of younger people, 25 to 34, who own homes in the Lower Mainland is significantly higher than in Toronto.
That's right. And you also mentioned Olympic Village. I heard you talk to a developer from Olympic Village.
Yes, I spoke to Shara Malik, who was with the Millennium Development Group that developed the Olympic Village, and they ran into some issues with the city. They owed a lot of money, and the city put them into receivership. Some people question the decision to do that, but they finished the village. They built it in basically 30 months. They built 8 city blocks, which was, incredible. I was down there recently, and I can remember when it was just an industrial kind of wasteland there. And now when you go down there, there's Urban Fare, there's TD Bank, there's London Drugs, there's the Terra Breads, there's the Tap and Barrel, and there's a beautiful community center. And you see that this time of year particularly, you see the dragon boat racers out there. And it's a very thriving neighborhood. And next door to it, these 8 blocks, Concert Properties is about to develop a massive development. And then there are other developments in the area, and the whole neighborhood has really come alive. His company, the Millennium, suffered a lot of bad press, but he's quite proud of the project he built. One of the interesting aspects of this, though, was when the city embarked on this Olympic Village, he borrowed money from a Fortress Group, which was this investment operation in New York, rather than borrowing from Canadian chartered banks. And then Fortress Group decided to stop forwarding money before the Olympics, so the city took on responsibility for the debt, and that's where the issues happened with the city. But the project is very successful, and I think it's added to Vancouver. Bob Rennie is calling it he uses this term energy zone to these areas that are kind of magnets for people, and the Olympic Village being one. He talked about Marine Gateway was another one. Transit is often an important consideration, so you get certain things like Surrey Centre is really coming alive, although there's a huge amount of supply coming on in that area, and there's a new SFU Woodwards, and you've got the Central City Brew Pub and the Bing Tom Design Library. So some of these nodes, New Westminster is another one where there's 5 SkyTrain stations, a little more affordable than Vancouver. And another one that Bob Rennie was pointing to was Brentwood. And this was an area, it was an old shopping mall that was kind of not really the most desirable area for a long time. But when the Millennium Line was built through there, kind of going out towards Lougheed Town Centre, that what happened was Brentwood kind of came alive. And so Bob Rennie was comparing it to Metrotown, which really emerged with the development of the Expo Line, which opened before the World's Fair in 1986. Millennium Line opened around 2000, and since then there's been a massive amount of development. A company called Shape Properties is doing, I think, 10 buildings or something. It's a massive development, and there's going to be a plaza and a town square, and it'll be interesting to see this evolve along with the redevelopment of the mall. So Brentwood is an area that I think we can expect to hear a lot more from in the future.
Yeah, and